Selection process of the party and government leaders in China is very much driven on a merit basis, and how to find out meritocracy needs a very scientific and very tight process. Of course, the end game is a very complicated one, because throughout the system you have many human factors at play, and therefore I think while on the one hand, a lot of scientific means and processes are required and are very much at play. On the other hand, human factors are also very important. Now, corruption in China is a big problem and is very much reflected in the corrupt officials at very high level of government and party positions. That means the selection of the leaders, of the cadres, as just now mentioned, has some flaws in the process or in the human factors at play, which need to be further improved going forward. By the end of the day, leaders or cadres or human factors are the most important thing, regardless of how much strong or foolproof the process themselves are.
As we just mentioned, this is an evolving system. So what major changes would you say are the major changes in recent years?
Yes, indeed. I think over the past 5 years, the Chinese society at large is becoming more and more sophisticated. China is becoming global very fast, and therefore, in addition to the traditional talents very much needed in China now, we need new qualifications, new type of leaders, people who can really face up on the global stage and talk on an equal basis with leaders and the corporate leaders from many other countries. Therefore, I think the selection process itself is evolving, and China now, for example, is promoting more Chinese nationals to be seconded or to be working at international organizations, etc. All this requires new way of thinking and new talents and new skills to be identified in the younger and more professional leaders in China.
What about the supervision on leaders themselves and the leaders' accountability to the people?
Yes, indeed. I think in China there is a process which is very much focused on playing the trust in the leaders. That means if a leader, man or female, goes into his or her position, there is a lot of empowerment so that he or she can really play their duties without too much checks and balances. This is all designed for the good. However, human beings have flaws, and many human beings actually turn out to be very much corrupt, and they cannot resist the temptation of the power. And therefore, I would say that in addition to really playing the trust in the people serving in high positions of power, we need to build up much more stronger and resilient checks and balances into the system, so that people with the highest level of trust will not play foul with the rules and will still live up to the expectation of the people. And ultimately, not only they need to be loyal to the party, they also need to be willing and happy to serve the fundamental interests of the people. That's really the bottom line of this whole leadership hierarchy.
Right, so talking about trust, in the past years we often heard that some cadres were out of reach with the people, with the masses. Do you think things have changed since the year 2012 when the 18th CPC National Congress was held?
Well, first of all, I think China as a country and the Chinese society at large are changing very, very rapidly. There are now challenges which were not heard of 5 years ago, for example. And there is a lot of new threat to peace and stability in China, including terrorist threats, for example. And I think the leaders in different positions at different levels of the hierarchy need to be adapting themselves to the new challenges and climb up the learning curve very quickly, so that they are always ahead of the challenges rather than way behind the challenges. In this way, they will be able to better deliver themselves and play a very important and indispensable role when the crisis happens in China. Over the past 5 years, there are new challenges coming up in China, both in our domestic society, but also in the overreach of the Chinese economic and trade power beyond the Chinese borders, reaching into all corners of the world. And I think this requires, as I mentioned, the new generation of leaders better adapted to new challenges at home as well as abroad.
Thank you very much, our current affairs commentator.
Thank you for having me.